I'm going to be like a proud mom on here.
All right, everybody, welcome to Tiger Talk Tuesday, and we are starting episode 35. We've got Shannon on the line, and she is entering her third year as a member of the SaultCollege Cougars women's hockey coaching staff. For those of you that are new to the series, this is transitioning to life after sports, and as a community of athletes, we are coming together with a mission to support those suffering in silence that, for whatever reason, they're navigating transitions in their life after injury, retirement, or unforeseen circumstances, whether it happens directly after leaving sport or later on in life. We're sharing conversations from all over the globe. And so welcome, Shannon. I'm going to give you a brief intro, and then I want it all to be about you. Okay. So after playing minor hockey in Sault Ste. Marie, Shannon continued her hockey career at the University of New Hampshire, where we were teammates with the Wildcats, who were part of, yes, look at that sweater. I love it. We were part of the NCAA Division I Hockey East Conference. With the Wildcats, her team won multiple regular season and Hockey East playoff championships and made appearances in the Frozen Four championships. Individually, she was named as part of Hockey East all academic team. Nice. Recipient of the Hockey East Fan Favorite Award in 2006 and Sue Merz 7th Player Award. After graduation, Shannon served as the assistant coach for the Elmira. Am I saying that right? Elmira? Elmira College Soaring Eagles in Elmira, New York. During this time, the Soaring Eagles competed in the NCAA Division III ECAC West Division. Between 2007 and 09, the Soaring Eagles won multiple regular season and playoff titles and placed second at the 2009 Frozen Four. Awesome accomplishment. Shannon was primarily responsible for coordination of the defense, off-ice training, and player recruitment. And then after 10 years of policing, Shannon is now a professor at Sault College within the Justice Studies Department. Very cool. I'm excited to hear about that. And Bolduc was a key contributor. Am I saying your last name right?
It's like duck, Bolduc.
Bolduc. Okay.
Common mistake. I'm getting used to it
I
too.
know he was Clement, so it's a different, recently married. And Bolduc was a key contributor behind the bench during the 22-23 season when the Cougars celebrated a 31-0-0. That's amazing record. And were named ACHA national champions after a 6-1 win over Northeastern University. Welcome to the call, Shannon.
Oh, excited to be here. I said, might
Yeah.
as well press record because you and I love chatting anyways. So this is perfect.
I know. Okay, so let's go back to your time as an athlete. Obviously with the focus being around mindset and resiliency. When, as a younger player, was that something that was even on your radar, or where in your life did you kind of first have your encounter with a little bit of transition or adversity along your playing career?
Spend a little time thinking back to because I know I'm a fan of your podcast, so I know you like to start out with, hey, you were a kid one day playing hockey and how'd you get here? And I think growing up playing hockey, it was always just really easy. And I think a lot of athletes say that, right? They stuck with it and they gravitated towards it. They loved it because it was something that they were good at, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think we all know that that only really takes you so far. And I mean, all the way through playing hockey here in the Sioux and going through my high school years playing kind of like travel hockey, heading down to Ottawa all the time. That was all easy and fun. And it's interesting when you think of, how did I get here from there? It's all scripted when you're a kid, right? The next step is the next tryout, the next team. Like you have your parents' guidance. It's a little more of like an incubated experience, right? Your goals are very clearly laid out, and not even necessarily for yourself, even though you want to attain them. It's a really straight line when you're a kid, and then all of a sudden you get to university, and especially for women,
Yeah.
where I know there's a National Women's Hockey League, or I'm not sure what we're calling it. I'm sorry, I'm not up on it quite
PWHL
yet.
now.
PWHL,
Yeah.
or
Newest league.
sticking with that. You knew that your career, like this was the NHL for you when you made Division I NCAA hockey. That was it, right?
I
So I
guess there's
think
a stat out there that says it's about like a 1 or 2% of athletes go to the NCAA. I don't know the exact stat, but I remember listening to that on a podcast. I was like, really?
I love it.
I never had heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't really put it into perspective, like where you are and where you were, because we're not those type of people, right? We're just head down, just charging forward, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, my first transition really came during those 4 years at the University of New Hampshire. So 2007, 2000, no, 3 to 07.
I was
Um,
like, wait, I was
yeah,
like, I
let's
graduated
do
in
this
04.
math.
How are we
We played
teammates?
together my freshman year, which was awesome. We played defense together, which was so fun. I had been a defenseman my whole life. Heading into my second year, I think I was still just I was one of those people that I was just letting life come at me. I wasn't necessarily setting my own goals or my own path, because that's all life has ever done, is just come at me and I just handled it. Life came at me, I just handled it. And all of a sudden I found myself living off campus, which I would have never chose for myself. No car, no way to get to practice on time. All these classes I had put myself in, like pre-med, I was following who I thought I needed to be, right? And I crashed my sophomore year. And I think it's a well-known thing, sophomore slump, but for me, it wasn't like an attitude thing. It was like, I literally set myself up for failure that year. And I think when we talk about transitioning, we need to, when you look back, it's easier to say, you know what? I learned a lot by just sitting in it for a while. I really failed and I really didn't figure it out right away. And parts of me are still having aha moments about that year, but it was really hard. And I think of, because
you
that
say
year was
hard,
so hard.
is it academically, clearly lots of transition, you're off campus, you're trying to get places, you don't have that support network like you would at home, say, for example. What specifically, when you say it was hard relationship wise? Was it hard on the ice? Was it hard in the classroom? Like, when you think about that, I'm sure there's one thing that pops into your head. Or was there a difficult teammate that you had to navigate?
There was a lot going on, besides like the physical struggles of like riding my bicycle in the wintertime a couple miles a day, because I
don't remember that.
This is how this happened. I didn't realize that we're not all the same, right? And I just thought, everyone else is moving off campus, I can do it too, I'll figure it out, because I always figured it out. But I wasn't the same as everybody else. I didn't have a car, I didn't have a lot of extra cash. Myself and a few teammates actually would sweep up after the men's hockey games, and we would clean the bathrooms at the hockey rink, and we would get paid a couple extra dollars. And that's how I kind of scraped by. But I think for me, the aha moment was, I need to look at myself for once in my life and say, what do I need? What is it that I need to succeed? Because I had totally disregarded any of my own needs for so long, because I was always just taken care of. When I went to university, it was my first big girl moment where I, basically I had failed myself, and it was no one else's fault. And I was still doing fine. Like, I'm not saying wasn't failing all of my classes, but like my hockey performance went down. I lost a bunch of weight because I was stressed and I was biking like 5 miles a day, and I didn't have a lot to eat. And you know what I mean? It wasn't, and I could reach out. There was supports. And I also learned that lesson. I needed to learn when to wave the white flag and ask for help, right? So I finally got it together near the end of that year, planning for my junior season. And I was so motivated to get it right. I was so motivated to finally work out in the off season, like do it right at home and actually train. I got a hold of the housing, UNH housing, and I got myself on a list to go back on campus. And guess what? I wasn't living with my teammates anymore, and I wasn't rooming with my best friend on the hockey team. I had to go in and put my name in a lottery and kind of tuck my tail between my legs and say, put me wherever you got a room. So I lived with people that I had never met, which always ends up being a blessing in disguise, because I've got great friends. But I took a hit sophomore year, and honestly, I'm glad it's part of my story, because junior year I came back with a safe, close place to live. Still didn't have a car. Still rode my bike everywhere. But you know what? I had a plan for making sure that I was getting the right nutrition, and I, adjusted my courses, and I kind of set my sights on an attainable goal academically. Went into exercise science, which I ended up loving, and it all kind of fell into place. But I think that I would have not had such a good jump, even in my, my performance on the ice, had I not struggled so hard sophomore year. So it was a lot of
sorry to cut you off. This is a really important piece that I really want athletes and anyone listening to really hear, because those moments of struggle are what make us grow. And, I talk a lot about parents doing things for their kids and not, we're delaying development when we do that. And as much as it probably was awful in the moment and going through it, it's neat when you look back and you're like, man, that really pushed you, because that's where self-leadership and self-reliance is born, right? And
Absolutely.
it's really neat. And I didn't even know that that was your experience that year. So I feel terrible that I didn't even know that. But
Well, I think you had graduated. This was
on
my
that,
second year.
okay.
Yeah, so you weren't there, else it probably would have been like, Janine, I'm hungry. But this is the thing though, like I'm probably gonna have coaches, maybe they'll listen to this and they'll be like, well, we didn't know she was starving. But the truth is, I didn't ask for help because I didn't even know how. I'd never needed help, right? Let's be honest, we were surrounded by people who just adored us our whole lives. And I'm making a generalization, so maybe just for me, I'd always been fully supported, and
No, I felt that too. I really did.
This is my first time to like really have a challenge. And
Yeah.
you know what? I think I did well with it, but it took me a long time. So my grades suffered, my health suffered, my mental health suffered. I had all of the young kids stuff going on, like long distance boyfriends, and struggling with my major at school, and also positionally in hockey. I ended up near the end of the year getting switched to being a forward, which I had never done my whole entire life. And that's a whole conversation in itself about finding an attitude that you could work with even
Oh,
when you're
junior
still
year, they put me
struggling.
on defense and I was like, oh God,
I
no.
didn't
But
even know you weren't a defenseman.
yeah, after junior, after about a month, I really like settled into like, yeah, played my last few years as D when Coach
Okay,
Mac
so
took
we have the
over.
opposite stories. I finished out as a
Yeah,
center.
I know. I was forward and center in the first few years, and then when Coach Mac came on, we needed another defenseman, and I was a strong backward skater,
We got
so
to
they
talk to Coach Mac because he did the same thing for me. He moved me up. And you know what? I went from being like a top forward, somebody who like I was playing a lot and I felt pretty good about that, even though sophomore year was a little rough, to having to learn a whole new position. And I ended up for a while being a fourth line center, which was even less of what I signed up for, right? So there was definitely some growing pains in there. But when I came back to that junior year, I knew that they were keeping me as a forward. So I worked all summer on my mindset, like just getting
I
excited
love
about
it.
it. Fresh slate. Here we go. And to be honest, and I think that, I'm still this person. I'm just happy to be here. I've
Yeah.
always been like a really like gracious person. And when I think of my experience at UNH or any type of experience that you're offered, it really helps to have that gratitude. And I think that made me a little naive going in, right? Thinking I don't have to worry about the details. I made it. I'm at a Division I school and I've got a scholarship and everything's taken care of.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm glad that reality kind of smoked me in the face there the second year, because it helped me shape my own experience, which
Yeah.
I think that we do need to take ownership of our experiences at some point as athletes.
I love that. I love that you said that, because I was even reading about a teacher who they were talking about it's not up to the professor to teach, it's up to the students to, put in the effort to learn. So it's same is true for athletes. Let's go to life after sport. So you've obviously had a great policing career. You look so cute in your pictures that you sent me. I was like, oh my gosh.
I was
How
so
did
proud
that
of that job.
I
Yes.
know. I know. So
So
you get into policing and then you get into coaching. In that time frame, what years would you say would have been the big transition years, and what did you have to overcome mentally in order to I know, and I know there's personal stuff that we talked about off camera, years ago. But what were those really defining moments where you really were changed, do you feel like, or transformed and evolved as a human because mentally you were challenged?
I think just the decision to get into policing is where to start with that, because did my 4 years at UNH. I did 2 years as a grad assistant at Elmira College, which was amazing. And I call that my big girl decision because I decided not to keep playing and I really wasn't done. And I listened to one of your interviews last night and you talked about a grieving process. And
Mm-hmm.
my time at Elmira I loved every second of it, but I was totally grieving as a player the whole time, trying to figure out how can I be a coach when I'm not done being a player and these kids are the same age as me. But after that, I decided, even though I loved coaching at the time, I really wanted to spend some time on myself. So I went back to my home base and went back to the Soo. I kind of looked around the landscape and thought, well, I need to get a job. I need to, start my life. I'm ready to start my life now, right?
Yeah.
And I had a couple like contract jobs, and actually one was at SaultCollege. And I realized that contracts can be scary as a young person, right? You know, you're not guaranteed a paycheck past a certain point. And I started to finally ask questions about what am I going to do with my life, right?
Yeah.
Because it always just been about me and this career, this hockey career, right? So I had spoken to a few people who were like, what about policing? And it had never really stuck on my radar, even though I had a few family members who loved their policing career and always thought it was a very respectful job. I never thought, you know, that I would do it. And the more I talked to people about it, they would say, you know, you're part of a team. You get to be a community leader. You're constantly working on your skills. You know, you have to be really on the ball. You know, it's a proud profession. It ends up being, you know, kind of a lifestyle, and every single aspect of policing kind of just clicked with who I already was. So naturally I got right on signing up to be a police officer and lucked out, got a job kind of right away. And boom, it was like 9-ish years that I ended up being a police officer, around 5 years in the car on patrol. And then I did my last years in investigations as a detective, which I
Ooh, I
adored.
feel like I would be a great detective.
You would. You know what? There's a little bit in everybody.
My husband's always like, he should have been a detective in another
Yeah.
lifetime.
Hey, totally fun job. But to talk about transitions, transitioning to policing was pretty natural. Let's be honest. I really felt like as a hockey player, there's a lot of good hockey players that become police officers, and it's totally the team aspect. It's a challenging job,
Well, you notice
physically,
athletes do
mentally.
like policing, firefighting, real estate, a lot of those things where you're not strapped to a desk are kind of, I find,
It's
favorable to the athlete.
Yeah, it's the same mindset. You don't know what you're doing every day. There's always a challenge. There's always a problem to sort out, right? Um, Leaving policing was really difficult because I thought that I was gonna put in my 30 years just like everybody else. And it's such a neat, there's a hierarchy in policing, and you can climb the ladder or find a really great place that you're loving and just be awesome in that area. And
What
I
was the
was
thing? Why did you want to leave policing? Like, what was there? Did you want a different type of family life? Did you want, like, what was kind of the biggest reason where you were like, you know what? I
so
love it,
not
but
just to keep with where we're going. I'll just say I went through a divorce and I
mm-hmm.
had 2 young kids at the time. And work-life balance is a tough challenge in policing, especially going through a divorce and single parenting for, let's say, a week at a time. I was in the detective office and they were great with me. It's just, I always felt like I was giving only 50% to either side. I could never be great at both. And as an athlete and somebody who's always, you know, constantly pushing themselves, I almost had like a mental burnout where I was panicking inside because I couldn't be great at either of them. And I knew that there was no end in sight, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yep.
And I was physically, emotionally, mentally exhausted. And even though a divorce is, you know, a season in your life and you know that it's going to turn over and it's going to get better, I knew it was a crossroads for me. And it was actually my now husband who sent me the job ad for a full-time professor job at Sault College teaching in policing. And
I love it.
I had luckily enough got my master's in education while I was at Elmira College, when I made my big girl decision to keep going with my education instead of going to, let's say, Switzerland and playing hockey, which would have been awesome, but hey,
Yeah.
that was my choice. It kind of came back and it helped me out. So the way that I
Funny, eh? How
rationalized that in
looking
my head,
back, you see those decisions that we make and you don't want, you
huge.
kind of wonder, what am I doing? And then it makes sense 10 years down the road.
It didn't make any sense forever until that very moment. And it felt like leaving hockey because I really loved policing and I was never ready to leave it. But I also saw what I could do as a professor, as a coach to these young people. And I think when you really boil it down, like if you really spend the time thinking about what you love about this job or any job, it was the people that I loved, and it was the interactions that I had with the public that really filled my cup up. And there's not a whole lot of that in policing. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of in-between stuff. So I said, I have an opportunity to still be in the policing world, to still be involved as a professional, but I get to do the part that I love all the time. So I went for it, and it was
I
very
love it.
scary and it was terrifying, actually. And I think I might be the only person who I cried sad, scared tears when I got the job offer. But it was because I knew that it was another ending for me and I wasn't quite ready. So
how did you approach that? Like if for any athlete that's listening to this and, they're struggling with whether they've left sport and it could have been due to injury or retirement or whatever, wherever life had pushed them in that direction, how did you bridge that gap and not seamlessly transition, but gracefully, humanly transition
I
into
think
that?
I knew I had support of my family, that it was the quote unquote right thing to do, but that doesn't always make it the easiest thing to do, right? A lot of the hardest decisions I had made up until that point, were the best ones. So I knew being scared wasn't a limiting factor in my decision. I think what I had to do was, honestly, it sounds really silly, but I made a chart of, pros and cons, because that's just the way that my brain works, really straightforward. And with that list, I made sure that things that were a priority to me were given more weight. So at the time, and I think especially as you get older, family is very important. And although I can pull off anything and I could work 24 hours a day, a work-life balance going forward, looking into 5-10 years ahead, was important to me. So I knew that I couldn't get those years back with my young kids. Spoke to some people who knew me and my situation well and got some really good advice. And yeah, it was a pros and cons list. And my future job at the college, it won out because my priorities needed to be family and my health and wellness and mental health. Yeah. So could I have kept going in policing and sat here today and been just as glowing? Absolutely, right? Because we can take multiple paths. I think that once I surrendered to that, I lost a lot of the fear about missing the policing job because I knew that I would find ways in the future to incorporate that.
Yeah.
So, I literally looked back to some of my experiences in hockey and thought, okay, I got moved from defense to forward and I was shattered. I grieved that, that thought of maybe moving on as a defenseman somewhere after UNH. I knew that I had to have a positive attitude, even if the days weren't going well. And I remember being really bad at being a forward for a long time. So I had to just say, give myself a little bit of grace and remember I'm going to be new at something again. It felt all too familiar. Honestly, it was almost like I had practiced,
like PTSD from before.
Honestly, though,
yeah,
leaving hockey is huge, and then you finally find something else that you love, and you leave it again. So I'm not even saying there's parts of me that aren't still working on those changes, because there's been nothing but change in my life, since becoming an adult. It's funny. My whole childhood seemed kind of straightforward and easy, head down, work hard, accomplish everything. And then ever since I became an adult and I was able to make the decisions, it's been like this. Yeah. And I think it's okay because I always made the best out of every situation. And even if it's not going well, I always find a way, to make it my own. And I'm honestly, it's interesting I'm on your podcast because I'm in the middle of it right now. Like, you guys are all gonna have to check back because I'm trying to put into play things that I did learn when I went through that first transition. So like, I'm 3 years into my 4th year of teaching and it's still all new and I'm still not great at it. And, I've never been in a comfort zone. The only thing constant in my life has been change. I went through the divorce. I had to move houses. I changed jobs. I got remarried. I had another baby. I'm a new mom again. Right. And everyone is different. So
I know,
we just kind of just keep pulling from the old lessons and learning new ones, a lot of new ones along the way.
So would you agree to someone listening, if they're struggling, obviously taking a moment to step back and really reflect on their life and what's important to them? One thing I always talk to anyone that I'm coaching, it's like with every yes, who gets the no? Does your health get the no? Do your children get the no? My husband tells me all the time, he's like, I'm very supportive and he's so lovely to support me and my goals. But a lot of times, that I'm in the office with the door closed while the family's hanging out, instead of sitting in front of the TV watching a movie, I'd rather be working on like my writing or creating stuff in Canva for my Tiger Method stuff. So asking yourself, what are we saying yes to, and looking at a piece of paper, like when I say yes to this, who's getting the no, and then really saying like, okay, this is what I want. These are the parts that I want in my life. How do I put them into my calendar, and what career path is going to support that vision? And it sounds like that's what you did for yourself in that next phase.
I really like that. With every yes, there's a no, because I really did feel, and I know there's still parts of me that feel like when you're done playing hockey, that identity of being a hockey player is something
Mm.
that you grieve, but you have to move on. Like you can't carry it around with you, right? I'm doing that with my policing career because I was Shannon, the hockey playing police officer.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they kind of went together, right? So like, still doing the work, and the no for me was that idea of who I was, that I
Yeah.
was Shannon, the hockey playing police officer, and I was so
And
proud
you're
to be
proud
that
about it.
person.
Yeah.
So proud. And I think the work that's being done and the work that has been done is saying, I'm still Shannon,
Yeah.
the hockey playing police officer who's now a teacher. And I think that's something we need to remember, is that we can always reinvent ourselves, and it doesn't mean
Mm.
we have to lose our past successes. And I don't need to introduce myself in that way, right? That I was an
No.
NCAA hockey player. Actually, I'm the kind of the opposite person. Like you would probably never know these things about me unless we were talking about something
Yeah.
that brought it up, right? And I think that it doesn't mean it's not in me. It just means that it's not part of my current story. Do you know what I mean? I don't need to tell that story because I'm working on another one, and it's like an
Yeah.
addition, right?
And it's part of you. I mean, when you strip back all the layers, the one thing you're left with is you and yourself, that internal voice. And that's something that I always talk to people about, making sure you're cultivating and nurturing that connection to yourself. Because when you do strip away the titles, which for me too, hockey player, business owner, all the things, you're proud of it. Of course, it makes you feel good. You've accomplished something, even, my recent one as a TEDx speaker, but I can't let that, if you hold on to that, that's going to stunt your growth moving forward. So
Yeah.
for anyone listening, I mean, I think we know the common theme here is, introspection, taking time to step away from your life so you can really take a look at what matters most to you. If you are going through a period of transition, be okay with being not okay.
Sit in
Um,
it.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Any last words for people listening that are struggling in silence, that, if there was one piece of advice that you could give your younger self when you were going through that really tough transition in your sophomore year, what would be that piece of advice that you'd want to leave our athletes with?
Well, I think I've said it a couple times, that life is kind of like it's like a season, right? There's seasons of your life, and it's easy looking back to see the different seasons where, it's summer and you're going, and then you move into winter and it's time for rest. And I think, especially as hockey players, there was always an off season part to our, the actual season where you're running. And if you could just take a step back at any moment where you're struggling and realize that this is just the off season, right? This is where you do your work. This is where you do your planning. And if you're lost, just, it's okay to sit in it for a while and give yourself that grace, because soon as you start moving in a direction that you are comfortable with, it all comes back. It's
Once
literally
an
just a
athlete,
season.
always an athlete, no
It
matter
just,
what, right?
and I find it kind of funny thinking about my new career path as a teacher, how I have 2 sessions of 15 weeks, which is like first part of the season, second part of the season. And then I have an off season in the summer where I'm getting ready. And I was like, I didn't even choose that. It just kind of happened. And I
Yeah.
find it so funny that that's just the way that I work, right?
Mhm.
We grew up doing something a certain way, and now it's just my life works that way professionally as well. So I think just knowing that, the seasons are going to change, and just to keep working and stay positive, be proud of where you are, because honestly, and I know that you can agree with this too, some of my lowest lows and my hardest struggles have been things that I'm most proud of.
For
So just
sure.
keep that in mind. If you're struggling, it'll change and it'll get better, because you are you.
I love it. Well, you guys, you heard it from Shannon Bolduc. Did I say it right? Bolduc? Bolduc?
Bolduc, yeah.
Bolduc.
I'm
Tell your
just
husband,
keep
sorry,
in
not
mind
trying to
I'm in
butcher the
the
last name.
post hockey, post police officer, teaching mom phase of my life. So I'm still working it out too.
I
So
know
we'll do
you've
it
got such
together.
a cute little baby. Oh, the cheeks. Well,
Three
it's
girls.
been, I know, and 3 girls. I know they're so cute. I saw you post your little daughter, what, 8 is great or something, and she's
Yeah,
skating.
she picked number 8.
I love it. Well, episode 35. It's been a pleasure talking to you. What I love is you're such a heart-centered athlete, Shannon, and I've always enjoyed our conversation. So I really appreciate you hopping on and contributing to such an important topic that's near and dear to my heart. So you had it here, folks. Tiger Talk Tuesday, transitioning to life after sports, episode 35 with Shannon, former NCAA Division I ice hockey player, former police officer, now coach and professor. Thank you for joining us, Shannon.
Thanks for having me, Janine.